والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. So we've been talking about the path of Shaytaan, and we mentioned many things about how this path starts. And it starts with certain qualities that he puts into you. For example, laziness, love of the dunya, and these things we mentioned. Then we talked about the 4 conditions of the path of Shaytaan. And they are as follows are what? Number 1, we mentioned false beliefs, ignorance of your religion, persistent in sin without tawbah. And the final one was? Does anyone remember? Yes. Also, steadfastness and mujahidah in doing sin, putting your effort in doing sin. And now we then went on to what we would call the steps or the actual stages the Shaytaan takes you through. And the thing is, with us as Muslims in this country, Shaytaan has much more chance of getting to us than maybe in other places, right? And many of us, we think, oh no, if I was to, for example, go Umrah, come back, I'll be free from Shaytaan. Or if I leave and then come back to this country, or go to another pious country and then come back, I will change. I will go Hajj, I will come back, I will change. But the problem isn't the country you're in, really. The problem's never the country you're in. The problem is what's happening inside you. And what's happening inside you is the first thing that we mentioned is the nafs. The first stage is the Shaytaan. He uses your nafs against you. Right? Like the child is playing with the Rubik's Cube. The Shaytaan is moving you around how he wants. He whispers to our nafs and we listen to it. Yes, Shaytaan, he moves us like this and we listen to him. He goes, why don't you go, look at this thing? We look. Why don't you go here? We go. So the nafs, it wants things, it desires things. But as a Muslim, your job isn't just to listen to your nafs. It's to listen and to give it what it needs. For example, to marry, to eat, but eat halal. To drink, but drink halal. Once you're able to do that and tame your nafs, that's when you're going to have success. But what Shaytaan does, he first whispers to your nafs, why don't you do this? And then from the nafs, it goes to your heart. And then your heart desires it, then it wants to do that evil. And we mentioned the traits, for example, greed. Your nafs goes, I want money. And then the greed in your heart is like, yes. And then what happens from your heart, it goes to the 3rd stage, which we're going to talk about today. It goes to the mind. So it starts off the desire with your nafs. Then it goes to your heart. Then it goes to your mind. And now your mind starts plotting and it starts to plan. And they go, evil in your mind is like a spark. The quicker you put it out, the better. What we do, the spark comes, why don't you steal? Why don't you look at her or him? And then what we do is we entertain that thought. And we entertain it, and then the spark becomes smoke. And then the smoke becomes fire. And it engulfs your brain. But then it's too late. And then when your mind is engulfed in that sin, it then sends signals to what? The final stage, your organs. So our teachers tell us is when you get a thought in your mind, there are 3 things you should do straight away. The first one you should do is seek refuge from Allah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. The second stage is you divert your attention to something else. So if we'll do a practical test. If everyone here thinks of a monkey in your mind, think of a monkey, right? Now I want you to think of a banana. Now most of you guys, you thought of the monkey with the banana together, didn't you? Or did anyone think of the banana completely separate? Yeah? MashaAllah, Yusuf, my nephew, he thought the banana separately. Most people, most normal brains, yeah, I'm joking. Most people, what they do, they can't think of 2 things separately. They'll bring them together, but it's very difficult to think of 2 things at the same time separately. So when a sin comes in, you should completely divert. Think about something else entirely. Think of the Kaaba, think of Allah, think of your mom and your dad, whatever. Yeah, or you think of your madrasa teacher. Yeah, bring some fear into you. Maybe not nowadays, but the olden school day madrasa teachers, they used to bring a lot of fear, right? Now, when you do that, that will help you break that cycle. In your mind, it breaks that connection. But if you continue to entertain that spark and start plotting and planning, then that's it now. It goes very quickly onto the, let's do that. So that's the 4 stages that we mentioned. Is the first stage is what? The nafs, it entices, it wants something. Then your heart, it desires it. Then your what? Your mind plots. And then your body does. And so the course that we teach here is we purify going the other way around. So we start off with the organs. We say, control your tongue. And in the Quran it mentions, and why is it that we start with the Quran, or with the tongue? Because in the Quran it says, Ya ayyuhalladina amanu ittaqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. O those that believe, fear Allah and straighten your tongues. And look at the benefit. Why? يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. So that your actions may become upright. So even Allah in the Quran is linking, if you keep your tongue in control, in check, your body, يُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ, your body will become in check. So they mention the tongue is very important. So we go through this step by step, which we mentioned, is that and you can do this for yourself. There's no one needs to take bayah, no one needs to do, it's just a method that's taught. You start off with your tongue and you work 30 days on the tongue. And then what will happen is when you start doing this, you start breaking that connection. So when the mind goes, why don't you say this to him? You're like, no, I'm controlling my tongue. You're breaking that connection, that habit. And then you go through your 7 limbs, as it's mentioned, your eyes, your hands, your feet, and you do 30 days on each one. Now when you get to all of the limbs, you've got them under control, then the second stage is what? You work on the mind, right? Then you start stopping the sins of the mind. There's actually 10 levels of the mind. To the point you start off not thinking of sin, to the point where only thing you can think of is Allah in every moment. So a teacher will say, think of Allah in every worship that you do. Then they will say, think of Allah in the dunya things you do. Then they will say, think of Allah now every hour. Then every half an hour, to the point that then you'll become in the presence of Allah throughout. Because we always wonder these big Sufi stories we hear, oh mashallah, this guy is in the presence of Allah all the time. They were normal people. Imam Junaid al-Baghdadi was a wrestler before he became awliya. That's what he was. A lot of these awliya, before they became awliya, they were either thieves, some were alcoholics, right? But they used that energy we mentioned to become good. So we too can do that. It's just about knowing the method, because I've just mentioned to you the method of Shaytaan. He first starts off with the certain base desires, then the conditions, then the stages that we mentioned. If Shaytaan's got a method for you and me, then is there no method to become a friend of Allah? Doesn't it not sound silly that Shaytaan has a method to misguide us? He's got his book and he teaches his shayateen, go do this now. What stage is he on? Okay, now go to here. And then we're sitting there like, how do we get to Allah? Oh, I'm going to go Umrah, see what happens. The issue isn't going Umrah and these things, they're good. The issue, as I mentioned last week, we've got habits inside us, the darkness inside us, we have to get that out. And the only way to do that is practically by stopping it. For example, we mentioned if you've got insincerity, bring sincerity in. Yeah, if you've got a tongue that swears, then bring in a tongue that's good. Actively force it. And we gave the example of the donkey in the well. That if you can take 1,000,000 buckets of water out, 100 liters out of a well that a dead donkey is in, but until you take the donkey out, the water will never get clean. And so this is what we're doing. We're going Umrah and Hajj, and we go to even Itikaf, and we think we're going to change. What happens is you're just taking water out, that dirty water out, the sins are coming out, but the donkey's still there. So what happens after 5-10 days after Eid? You go back to being, yeah? And this is because you have to attack and get rid of the donkey. And how you do that? You have to actively set yourself 30 days, I'm going to be sincere. I'm going to stop swearing. I'm going to stop looking at this. And when you start doing that, you attack this route. Inshallah, we'll stop here. It is one of the odd nights, and as is our practice, we will do a short dhikr gathering, inshallah. So some of the etiquettes, inshallah, if people need to go, you can go. But do please stay if you can. The etiquette of the gathering is that you bring the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into your minds. If it helps, unfortunately we don't have the projector today, but bring the name of Allah. Imagine the name of Allah, Alif, Lam, Lam, Ha. Bring it into your minds.